the trip coming up, doing some gear options that my wife has gotten it narrowed down to on our tent that we're going to be carrying. We are going to be sharing a tent, as I kind of covered in the video before when we took a look at the other tent that she thought may be a good option for us. The second one that she has kind of brought in to compare it to, or thought maybe a good option as well, is a big Agnes tent. It's another tent that we've had for quite some time. This is actually the Scout Plus UL2. Big differences between the freestanding tent, two-wall tent that we looked at before from REI. This is a single wall tent, and it does run some risk of condensation on the inside. We are going to a very fairly humid area in Kentucky, so that's definitely going to be something that we will take into consideration when we make our final decision. The big one on this though is that by going this route, it's trekking pole tent, so it cuts the weight of the tent itself from over 3 pounds to 1 pound 14 ounces. So it's definitely a lot of benefit there. Not so easy to break this one up though. With the other tent being that it was two-wall, it had a footprint and tent poles and things like that, we would be able to split up the weight and not carry the full 3 pounds each. We could break it up to almost matching £1.5 pounds. So we would kind of end up a little bit lighter each than what one of us would carry if we go this route. So anyways, enough talking about that. Let me set this thing up for you and we'll take a look around. Okay, got it all pitched up here for you, and I absolutely brought the wrong tent stakes for this area. So I've never been to this area before. I had driven past it a number of times, but I'd never come in to set up a tent or do anything like that. And unfortunately, just about, I don't know, 1.5 inches or 2 inches under the dirt, there are just a solid bed of rocks here. So it is pretty difficult to get these stakes in, but that's all right. We'll take a quick look around the tent and show you some features, and then we'll go over some technical stuff on the tent and show you why this may be an option. So for the tent itself, as you can see when I was pitching it up, you want to set up 2 different corners, like offset corners, and then pitch out your 2 remaining corners, and then come set your trekking pole in the front. And typically you're supposed to have an extra tent stake out here, but from the guy line at the top of the trekking pole, I went straight down to the same tent stake for both the vestibule guy out and the top peak guy out. There is a vent here on the front, and it has a Velcro that holds it, and you can kind of see underneath there just a little added ventilation. And then there are tie-outs on each corner of the front, as well as each corner of the vestibule in the front. And then there's a side pull out here, 3 in the back, and then 1 more, of course, on the other side opposite of this. So it is an A-frame style tent, and when this thing first came out, people really just gave it a hard time, and I couldn't understand it. I always liked big Agnes tents. They've always made a high quality tent. Of course, a lot of the pole type tents, there's some crossover between the exact same tents that REI makes by a different name. The fabric's the same, the materials are the same, so there's a lot of times even the same color used in the same years, with the orange color being used back 2016 and prior. So I've always just kind of, I don't know, I've had good luck with big Agnes tents, so I wanted to give this thing a shot, even though it had some kind of touch and go reviews, but no big deal. I've liked it. I've had a few good experiences with it, and it's been a tent that's done well for me. So let me just kind of get a little bit better angle here. When you're looking inside the door, now it only has the 1 door at the front, so you have to, it's a front entry, and then you have to climb, back and forth or straighten out once you get in there. which is okay. It's a little inconvenient compared to like a freestanding tent that would have a zipper door on either side, like the REI. It's a little less cumbersome to get in and out of those. Now, with this being a single wall tent, I do have to give it a big Agnes for putting so much venting in here. That's all mesh back here. There's mesh all the way down the sides, and then the entire front door, because it's blocked by the vestibule when zip close, it's just a mesh front door. So there's a lot of ventilation in here. It is a single wall tent, so that is very important to keep the condensation down. One of the big things that people said they didn't like about this is that everybody thought you had to set it up with your trekking poles inside the tent with you. Yes, that is an option, but no, you do not have to. So if you can see this kind of darker diamond shape area here, and then this other one in the back here, there are reinforcements in the tent to be able to pitch the trekking poles up inside. With that being said, it's not necessary at all. So on both front and back, I have my trekking pole on the outside. What that gives you the option to do, setting it up on the outside, is this tent, or this trekking pole, I set at an angle, which gives me about an extra 6 or 8 inches down here at the bottom for just a wider space to enter and exit the tent. Also, if you're working or doing anything in the vestibule, say organizing gear, or you're changing clothes or trying to find something that is stored in the vestibule, it makes it so much easier to have that just a little bit larger space. Let me set up the camera, get a little different angle here, and I'll go over some of the size and things like that about that. All right, so I figured I'd just climb on in here and show you kind of what it looks like with somebody inside of it. There is plenty of room for two 20-inch wide sleeping pads in here. You have 54 inches wide at the front, then 42 at the back. The height on the pole here is 45 inches. The back pole, it is a modified A-frame, so it's a little bit lower in the back. The back pole is 33 inches high. You get 14 square foot of vestibule space, which is nice. I mean, it gives you plenty of room. With that being said, though, it is a single wall tent, so something that we always have to take into consideration when using this is if you're moving around changing in the morning and you're brushing your head against the tent, or you're brushing your sleeping quilts up against the tent, there is some risk of condensation getting on it and getting your things wet. So just something that has to be thought about. It is fully seam taped on the floor. One of the cool things about this is for the bathtub floor, there's some sewn in corner triangle pullouts, and then there's one seam across the middle, but those are the only seams that really can leak in the floor. Well, other than the two spots where you could put your trekking pole inside the tent with you. I've never experienced any kind of leak on this thing. Big Agnes, I think, has always done a good job with their seam taping, so it works out well. So as far as ventilation, I've already kind of gone over it, but you have the one smaller vent here in the front when the vestibule's closed, and then the full sides, you have a 6-inch piece of net that runs all the way around the bottom of the tent, and then the whole back wall of the tent is completely net. So it's a really nice feature to have all that ventilation on a single wall tent. Definitely it's needed. So the floor is a little thin. This is a really nice, like, fluffy grass area, but I generally opt to use like this is a Tyvek ground sheet, and it's cut to be just a little bit smaller than the floor of the tent, so that rain that does drip won't puddle underneath the tent. And this other side of the vestibule can be folded back as well, so you can have the whole front end open for just complete sight out of the front. And like I said, when you zip the door closed, it's all netting, so you don't really have to worry about any kind of bugs or anything like that. Other thing that I mentioned earlier is the trekking pole being at an angle. You can see I have much more space for moving in and out. I'm 6 foot tall, weigh about 165 pounds, and yeah, I can get in and out of here with ease. It's super easy. So I think I'll give you one more walk around the tent and we'll close this thing up. All right, so that was a look at the second option of tent choices for my wife and I on our upcoming trip to the gorge. It's definitely a great option, I think. Being sub 2 pounds, it's an incredibly lightweight tent for how big it is. It is a trekking pole tent though, so we will have to carry the 12 stakes to be able to set it up and make it as sturdy as possible. We have one night that is probably going to be on more of an exposed ridge line where we'll need as much strength and rigidity as possible in the tent for any kind of wind or anything that comes up out of the gorge, or if we get some unexpected weather or high winds, anything like that. We're going to want that to feel as secure as possible, especially for my wife. I know that a freestanding tent definitely adds that little bit of extra security, being that it's tied out and it's more rigid. This having just the trekking pole in the front and the back allows for a little less rigidity throughout the top ridge line. So that's something that we'll take into consideration. Also being single wall with the condensation. It's a very humid area that we're going to, so we'll have to remember that for when there's two of us in one tent and moving around, changing, taking turns getting in and out of the tent. Are we going to brush up against the tent walls and possibly get that condensation on ourselves or our gear or anything like that? So it's definitely something that we will take into consideration when she's making her final decision, and you'll see what we chose out on trail. So if you have any questions or comments about the tent or anything else in the channel, please drop them in the box below. Otherwise, thank you for watching.